starting the webinar. So,
Okay, all right. Hi.
oh,
Hi.
Chris, everybody's here. Wonderful. Let me get the, okay. So welcome to the preview of our Mussar curriculum. I'm really excited. I just came back from the Nahas conference. Is anybody here a member of Nahas? It's the North American Association of Community and Congregational Hebrew High Schools. And it's really a great organization. I spent some days with them. They were focusing on Mussar to start out with, but I also did this curriculum with them, and it was really great. I'm going to send a link to all of you after this with their website and see if it's something you'd be interested in. It's a really inexpensive organization, and I thought they had a lot of helpful things for high school educators. So you can see what you think. So I just wanted to say that. So we will not start with highlights from last month because we already discussed that very quickly. I'm going to start with an overview. You know already a lot about the Chai Mitzvah program, but I'm just going to come into it kind of in an organized way so that we can see what's the same and what's different between the two curriculum. Hold on, I kind of would like to be a panelist also. Welcome, Hannah. I'm going to put you in, and you can unmute yourself if you'd like to. Oh, wait. Janice, did you want to be muted?
No. Oh, wait. I'm not muted.
Good. Nobody's muted. Okay, good. Anyway, I did this because anybody who wants to share, I'd love to have you just talk. Sometimes it feels funny to talk and not get any response. So, but anyway. So I wanted to let everybody know as the year draws to a close that I'm going to send out a SurveyMonkey survey that you guys can fill out, and that's really going to give the information we need for our donors. And as soon as we get the surveys back, we'll be sending out the $500 stipends. And I really appreciate all of you having been so helpful to participate this year in the program and share it with your students and share with me what's going on. So thank you. Okay, so the Mussar program is very similar to the regular Chai Mitzvah program. It also combines learning, some really nice texts for discussion starters, social action. The social action is a little bit different, but it does have examples of volunteer opportunities for each topic, and that can inspire your group towards things that are going on in your community, or you can do something from the links that we send you that are more national. And it also combines spirituality, suggestions for meaningful ritual observance. And the materials, just like the materials you've been using this year, there are notes for leaders, there's an introduction, a text, and a conversation for each text. There are links to additional information. There are activities of all kinds, and you do the ones, obviously, that work with your students. And then there are practices. Practices to cultivate each midah. So I think this is even true of adult Mussar study, I've found. So these are things that students can do between classes to help them integrate what they're learning. Sometimes it's like a meditation, sometimes it's some kind of, well, you'll see all kinds of interesting things that they can do. And just like now, there are webinars, and I'll send out a doodle poll the same way and hope that I can make it convenient for as many of you as possible. We'll discuss the monthly topic, we'll exchange ideas. I have to say, you guys have been amazing, and I feel like I've learned a lot from you. And you've had some really wonderful supplemental stuff to share, so I want to thank you for that now. And again, we'll have the same Chai Mitzvah Teen Facebook group. And since the topics, the Mussar topics, were chosen to correspond to the regular Chai Mitzvah topics, you can still be part of the global conversation. The stipend again for the program, for piloting it, providing feedback, posting on Facebook, and participating in the webinars. The stipend this year is only $250 because that's our budget, but I really hope that you'll still all participate and be able to use that for something very useful. So these are the old topics from last year. Just to review them: rites of passage, tzedakah, individual and community, interpersonal relationships, mindfulness and conscious living, adding new insights and meaning to the Passover Seder, Israel and the Jewish spirit, gratitude, and Judaism and the environment. For the Mussar curriculum, we've paired up. So rites of passage is paired up with wisdom. Tzedakah and philanthropy is paired up with generosity. Individual and community is paired up with compassion. Interpersonal relationships paired up with spiritual friendship. Mindfulness and conscious living is paired up with equanimity. Menuchat HaNefesh. This is one of my favorite ones. On the cover, there's a surfboard. It's about finding your balance. Passover Insights is paired up with Seder, with order. Israel and the Jewish spirit with faith, with bitachon. Gratitude is gratitude. And Judaism and the environment is paired up with humility. I've learned in Mussar, humility has to do with the space that you take up. And that's part of what goes on in that one. So it's really interesting. So today, we'll go over the first Chai Mitzvah Mussar topic, which is wisdom. But before I start it, I want to give you a little bit of background. People who have been on these webinars or actually heard me for the past like 3 months. I keep doing the same thing, but just in case, I want to give you the bio of Rabbi Pamela Wax. She worked on the materials. She's a staff rabbi and spiritual care coordinator at Westchester Jewish Community Services, which is a social service agency in White Plains. She's brought 16 plus years of Mussar practice and learning to many communities throughout the U.S. and currently teaches 4 Mussar groups in Westchester. During the last Jewish calendar year, she was co-author of a weekly Mussar Torah commentary through the Institute for Jewish Spirituality, and she's currently working on several other Mussar projects in addition to this one. She served as a Rabbinic Global Justice Fellow for the American World Jewish Service, and that married her spirituality to her quest for social justice in the global world. So I will tell you, working with her has been great. I've learned a lot, and I think we've come up with a really, really nice program for the year. The curriculum this year offers an opportunity to explore Jewish spiritual practice of character development, Mussar, by emphasizing a different virtue or midah each session. And there's a little history. So Mussar literature emphasizing character development as a means to emulating God has spanned centuries, but it became a movement with actual practices for cultivating character under the leadership of Rabbi Israel Salanter during the 1800s. So the themes for this session: wisdom can be achieved by learning from every experience, and every midah can be measured in the spectrum. So for example, I'm just gonna pick generosity because it was the easiest one for me to explain. You can be generous right in the middle. You can be kind of stingy, or you can be like the giving tree and give until there's nothing left but a stump. And that's not really something that is considered the right way to do it either. So that's one of the nice things about studying Mussar, is that you learn, and especially for teens who are kind of figuring out who they are and how they should behave, it's a really good time to analyze who you are and how you go about all the challenges you have in your life. So let's look at before we even do, I'll talk about the first text, but as you can see here, it says me and midot, and it's a checklist. So Judaism emphasizes Torah learning, but we also value wisdom that comes from life experience. So the message of this session is that true wisdom doesn't just come from books, it comes from applied Torah, from the ability to live out Torah values in our own lives. The Mussar movement came to be in part because Rabbi Israel Salanter was concerned about the yeshivot of his time. They were training Torah scholars who were not mensches. And he wanted Torah learning to be applied to character development so that students might become wise and compassionate as well as learned. So here, the midah of wisdom is paired with rites of passage because life cycle events are not only opportunities to celebrate or to mourn, but they're also times for deep personal growth. And we kind of talked about that when we just talked about rites of passage last year. But as we move through this study of Mussar, we'll find the midot that go to each topic. And it's a good opportunity to reflect on the midah of wisdom that might be learned on the trajectory of your life as you go through your different rites of passage. So before we read the first text, and the texts are really short, but before we read them, the kids are given this me and midot checklist. And you can see there are, I think, 24 character traits there. I made a poll so that we could try this ourselves. But the poll only allowed me to put in 8 midot, but I did it nonetheless. I'm gonna launch the poll, and I hope that all of you will fill it out, and then we can take a look at what we did. So does everybody have it there?
I have it, but it says hosts and panelists can't vote.
Oh, that's not good. Where does it say that?
It says it on the bottom of my little poll in red.
Oh, that's
But when I try and click the boxes, it won't allow me.
So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to make you all viewers for a minute.
Yeah, it works on mine.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, and it works on mine.
Yeah.
So it's just me, Nina.
Clearly, they just don't want you. Not interested.
They don't want me to vote.
I am going to demote you so you can.
Okay.
Here, I will make you a viewer. Now, can you vote? Of course, now you can't tell me that you can vote. If anybody cannot vote, let me know by typing into the question box. Good. Okay, it looks like everyone's allowed to vote. There are 2 questions, just because I know before I tested this on someone and she didn't realize there were 2 questions. So one is the 3 midot you feel you're pretty good at, and the other is the ones that need some improvement. So when I've done this before, I've had the students discuss their self-evaluations into group of pairs or small groups, and then we come back as a whole to do it. Okay, looks like everyone voted. And now I'm going to share the results. What happened was it became very interesting because we realized as a group what we valued and what we thought about ourselves. This is really all over the place, which is nice. It looks like the only thing nobody considers themselves strong in is self-control. And everyone would like to improve their self-control. That's great. It's also interesting to see how we feel about responsibility. I guess as adults, maybe, or as educators, we feel very responsible and patient and very honest. A very honest group. So this can be a really nice discussion with your class. Is there anybody who would like to say anything about why they chose what they chose? Okay, so we won't have that discussion here, but it would be a very nice discussion to have, I think, with your students. And it can be a really nice beginning for a discussion.
Actually, I really like the sheet and the fact that a lot of us don't even look at ourselves enough in these ways. Are we really doing this every day? And what can we do to do this every day? It's really nice. I mean, I'm like going, ooh, do I have enough joy in my life? I know I have enough responsibility, but do I have enough joy? So it's a really nice way to, you know, even for ourselves, look at that balance, and then to let the kids know that if they're looking at themselves in this way from a young age, then they're going to develop and be critically thinking.
I agree. I think self-reflection is a undervalued trait, and it takes time to get there.
Yeah, I think you're right. I just want to say that Jen, because I made her back to her. She's saying that Jen will need to spend some time describing and explaining these traits to our students. Actually, I think it's really nice that it'll be a discussion. What one person sees as responsibility and another one sees maybe a good discussion. And where people find joy, or people feel resilient. It's even to get a discussion going. There is no one definition, I don't think, of each trait. So that's something I want to point out as well. And I've done it a couple of times. And I did get the same discussion that Janet said about, do we need to describe this traits? And I really felt that maybe not. Maybe it's just really good to have a discussion and see what people think. That's my feeling. Because I think Mussar is pretty. There are certain things for sure, and as we read the text, we'll see what they are. But there are certain things that also, I think, need to be integrated in a way that they're personal, the way that you would personally see them. So this is a nice way to get things started. And the first text, it's who is wise. So, before I say that, this is a nice thing to save as well, because you can ask the students what they observed about themselves, and you can keep this, and at the end of the year, you can see if they see themselves differently or not. And that's something that's, I think, interesting. And see if about themselves, because that's kind of part of studying Mussar. How you're going to change because of what you learn about yourself. In their case, they're growing, so it's a natural time to be changing anyway. So the first text is really short. It's Benzoma says, who is wise? One who learns from every person. That's, classic Pirkei Avot. And it's really nice, too, because the questions impart a little knowledge as well. So we have a little Pirkei Avot, sometimes considering early Mussar text. It's itself a compilation of ethical teachings and wise maxim of Mishneh period rabbis. So depending how much time you have and how deeply you want to go into it, there's a whole thing you can discuss there.
Nina, can I interrupt you just a second? So there's a lot of feedback. So if you're not speaking, could everybody mute themselves and then maybe unmute? It's hard to hear you.
That's a very good plan. Thank you. I appreciate that very much.
And before I mute myself, I just want to remind, in about 5 minutes, I'll be sending off. So I'll see you soon.
Well, thank you so much for participating so far, as much as you have time for, and I'll send you the recording after.
Okay, great.
Thanks. Okay, so what I want to say is there's a little background on Pirkei Avot, and then the question is, as you consider your own life, who are the people who've influenced you, and what have you learned from them? And that's a nice discussion for the first time a group meets. And then also extrapolating from Benzoma's statement about learning from people, we can assume that experiences can also be great teachers. So what experiences have been most influential thus far in your life? If these kids just came back from the summer, all kinds of interesting things might have happened. So there might be a good discussion. And what these experiences have taught them is a great way to start sharing as a group. And if anybody wants to chime in, please do. Otherwise, I will go to the next. Okay, I really like this one, learning from nature. So the second text points out that we can learn not only from experiences, but from observation of the world around us. I think that's really good. I don't know how much people these days observe the world around them, and I think it's great to be encouraged to do that. Here's the quote. Rabbi Yochanan said, even if the Torah had not been given, we would nonetheless have learned modesty from the cat, and that stealing is objectionable from the ant, and fidelity from the dove, and appeasement in marriage from the rooster. So I like it. I just like this quote. I think it's fun. So the questions that go with this, the Talmudic text reiterates the idea that wisdom comes from sources other than Torah. The text gives 4 examples of animals whose midot we might learn through careful observation. So it is that every experience in our lives is part of our spiritual curriculum, an opportunity to develop our character and to grow spiritually. Think about something you've learned from your observations of plants, animals, or other natural phenomena. And I think this might be a challenging question, but having worked for the J&F Education Department for many, many years, I have a couple of examples that can get you started. So for example, think about how old you were when you were 4 feet tall, okay? How old people generally are when they're 4 feet tall. Now think about the tallest tree in the world. That would be the redwood tree. I don't know whether you know this or not, but the redwood tree's roots are only 4 feet tall, just like your 3rd graders. So how can a root that small hold up a tree that tall? Here's the answer. the roots don't grow straight. They interlock with the tree next to them. So every redwood tree is holding up another redwood tree. And that's something we can learn by observing nature. Or my other favorite quote from Rabbi Arthur Waskow, we breathe and the trees breathe. We breathe in what the trees breathe out. So we breathe each other into existence, and the breath goes in a cycle. It's another thing, if we observe nature, we can understand how things are interconnected and how we depend on each other. I'm sure once you get going that there'll be other ones that you can think of, not only about trees, but about other things in nature, how what we put out kind of influences what we bring in. And I think that's a really nice way to reach wisdom. And then getting more down back to nuts and bolts, what virtues do you think can be imparted from the normal rites of passage? Birth, death, bar bat mitzvah, mourning, marriage. And I would even extend it to things that we talked about last year. What can you learn from riding a school bus, getting your first job, getting your license? There's wisdom to be found in all of these activities. And if students are having trouble remembering what the midot are, they can look at that sheet that they just used, supplement page A, and that will help them to kind of frame their thoughts. Okay, I'm going to go on to the next text. This one I found really interesting. I like that all three texts are short, but each one approaches wisdom from another vantage point. So this one is called Silence is a Fence for Wisdom. It's also in Pirkei Avot. Rabbi Akiva says, silence is a fence for wisdom. So how can silence be a fence for wisdom? If anybody wants to answer, go right ahead. Otherwise, I can answer for you. Okay, so it's easier to do this if you think of not for, but meaning around. And think of silence as a fence that protects wisdom. And how can it protect wisdom? Well, the kind of silence that Rabbi Akiva is referring to is listening. Okay, so people can be silent for all kinds of reasons, not all of which will lead to wisdom. So what kind of silence do you think the rabbis were referring to? So I have to say that my youngest daughter is a genius like her mother. And when she was in second grade and she was learning how to keyboard, she came home one day and she said, the word silent and the word listen have the same letters. And we need to consider that, the power of silence, of listening before we speak. Later on in one of the later lessons, Pam comes up with this great thing. We're talking about how much space we take when we're in a conversation. Some people are too reticent. They need to push themselves out there. And some people interrupt everyone and they talk too much and they don't listen. And she came up, or somewhere came up with this acronym, WAIT, why am I talking? So it's interesting to talk about this and think about how we need to be silent if we're going to observe and learn and become wise.
Yeah, well, it's interesting too. I was in a class and the professor said to us basically, is what you're saying actually landing? And if not, shut up. It was really that easy because a lot of the times what we're saying isn't really being heard. And are we really paying attention? Are we grounded in what we're saying to understand that it's not even being attuned to? They're not even keying in.
Yeah, and it's important to think about that when you're speaking. That's actually why I love to have you guys on the screen, because I feel kind of foolish just talking to silence. So thank you for being on the screen. Mm-hmm. And the other thing, the next question is, how might silence be a useful tool in your own cultivation of wisdom? So there have been a few things that have come up in this conversation. Some people talk about the distractions we have today from social media, which are certainly very noisy and are not helping us become more wise. It's also important to think about silence before you speak. And as you said, how best to answer a question, or just how is your stuff landing? Exactly. So, and also the impact of our words on other people, which is also referring to what you said, because we want to really see how our words are landing. So those are some of the things about silence and wisdom. Okay, now we're getting to the practices. So they're generally simple things that can be done between classes. I don't know if you meet every week, every 2 weeks, once a month. You adapt, of course, for what your schedule is. And this first one, learn and list. So learn from every person, as Pirkei Avot suggests. Notice that you can learn the small, what you observe 3 times a day, and just jot it down. And then your students can share with the next class, because this will kind of motivate them to actually do it and share. But you know your students, and if you think they'll do it, do it. If not, you might do it yourself and then give an example. I don't know, but it's an interesting thing to do. The next one, acronym is art. So this is really interesting. We have this thing about Habad. So that Habad is an acronym derived from Chokhmah, which is wisdom, Bina, which is understanding, and Da'at, which is knowledge. And there'll be a link later on to more about Habad. But when I did this at Nachas last week, one of the educators said, we don't want Habad to be even in our materials because they are destroying our school. And I thought I would ask you guys how you felt about that. Whether you think it's bad to even bring this up, or whether you think this is something that's fine and valid. Anyone who want to?
It's part of our culture. I mean, it's there. And there are plenty of things about every culture that people like, or within the culture, and that people aren't crazy about. But you can't ignore it. These kids will come across Chabad at some point. They'll go to Israel and they'll see a Chabad house. They'll be driving around some part of the country where they say, oh my goodness, there's a Chabad here. It's important they know about it, if nothing else. And some of them really might embrace it. Who knows?
I have to say, can you hear me? Because there's a party going on in the other room. In our school, we actually have partnered with our local Chabad on campus, and we bring our kids there for field trips to expose them on purpose to something else for the sake of Am Yisrael, so that the first time they're experiencing it. And our particular Chabad couple is incredibly welcoming and open and wonderful, so maybe that's unique, but they attended a Shabbat service to see what it's like to go to I wanted them to go to an Orthodox service, and I couldn't get any of the Orthodox synagogues in the area to allow our students to come. And of course, Chabad was happy to host them. And it was really interesting for them to compare, and we required the parents to attend with them so that they had chaperones. And for some of the parents, it brought back a little PTSD from their days in conservative synagogues. We're Reconstructionist synagogues. So, and then during a unit on like gender and gender roles in Judaism, we sent them again to Chabad to visit the mikveh and get a little background so that they even know that exists. And again, the Rebbitzin here had this wonderful take on the whole issue of mikveh, and that, the girls asked, like, what do you mean we're dirty once a month? And well, like, how sexist? And she said, no, it's not that. It's that the power to produce life is so tremendous and so holy that when it doesn't happen, there's a little bit of a mourning almost before you get to really think about it before you reintegrate into society, because you just lost the opportunity to do something that is so amazing that your body can do. And do they really think that? I don't know. Is that just the spin they put on it for our students? But now our kids have had contact multiple times. So I would say I'm okay with it. We seek it out, and I think there's a place for it. Again, if you hold up the value of Am Yisrael, that we are all one people, one of the ways to overcome some of those differences and issues is for us to be exposed to them.
Can I ask, I have to ask, why did the Orthodox synagogue not allow your kids?
It wasn't like a not allow. I was trying to organize I didn't want to just have our kids show up, right, unannounced. I wanted to make it an organized thing. And I couldn't get the rabbis to call me back. I worked through, one of our teachers is a member of one of those synagogues, and he tried to facilitate it for us and was unable to. And basically they didn't want a bunch of kids around who might disrupt the service.
It's very unfortunate.
Yeah, and there's a number of Orthodox synagogues in our area. But in the end, it worked out really nicely because, Chabad can be so welcoming. And so, they have their own ulterior motives maybe, but they were so welcoming. And it happened to be the yard site of the rabbi's father's death. And so they had a huge, kiddish, and the kids stayed till like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And they had a really good time, and it was really informative for them to do that comparison between our services and what they saw, and they had questions about the women being separate, but they would never have been exposed to that otherwise. No matter how much we talk about it, it's a very foreign concept to them, but they saw it. And they saw it and saw that the women there who were living that life were not necessarily miserable, right? And to have in their minds the open accepting, it's possible that a different way of living, if I was living it, wouldn't feel oppressive, or wouldn't, that they have beliefs. So it was really interesting. It was a really interesting exercise that I intend to repeat.
I think that's great. And you might even integrate it with this, because there's a little bit of information about Chabad. It's really, I think that's great. And I agree with all of you, which is why I brought it up, because I think the same thing. I think there's so much divisiveness. We really don't need to add any more. So I think that is good. So there's a little more info about Chabad later on in this unit, but there's like an activity for the kids. They can put the Talmud text to the test by thinking of one of the things we talked about in the natural world, like the sun or grass, a breeze, a spider, anything, and writing a poem that the first letter describes something they've discerned from observing it. So I just made an example: sun, shine mitzvot on the world, unleash your creativity, new light every day. And I think it's pretty easy to do, and I think it's just like a fun activity, and it just helps again to like solidify what they're talking about. Another one is the Midam mentor. So this is a nice thing. Is there someone in your life who you consider wise? Interview him or her, asking questions like, I consider you very wise. How did you get there? What are the most important lessons you've learned in your life? How would you advise someone like me who would like to develop wisdom? And then have them share their interview as an online or offline blog or as a video. And I was thinking that you might even consider the blog becoming an ongoing activity from your group, where they can write something and post it. You can assign a different student, to contribute each time. And of course, you know how I love to talk about our Facebook group. This is a really nice thing to have in the Facebook group as well. And then the Midah card connection. So there is a page that you can print out on cardstock, and it's got the same cards that we were talking about, the same Midot that we had in our checklist. And you'll use this throughout the units in different ways. So for this session, look at the cards and pick out 4 or 5 that you think are related to wisdom. So this way they can discover how different Midot interconnect with each other. And it's very interesting. I did it with the educators at Nachas, and they did it in groups. And they came up with such different stuff. Like some people, you can relate, I guess, anything to wisdom in a way, but it was a great discussion of why they thought each of these Midot were related to wisdom. So that's a nice activity. And then the links. So Character Day 2017. This is great. So as I said, some of the social action links in this session, they're not always links to things that are happening. Sometimes they're ideas of things you can do that are social action, but they're not necessarily part of a website or an international or national thing. They're like more like ideas for actions you can take. But this one is a link to Character Day, which is an amazing thing when students get free discussion materials and resources. They join an online global conversation about character. They focus on who they are, who they want to be, how to develop their traits. And it's from letitripple.org, great site. It's September 13th. I don't know when your schools start and stuff, but it's before Rosh Hashanah. So it might be a really good time to try this activity. And then there are links to additional information. So this is
what's the activity related to?
Related to Character Day.
Mm-hmm.
There, you go to Character Day, and there are all kinds of activities for you that you just download. Okay. There are all kinds of discussions and text, and similar to what we're doing here, but it's part of like a global thing with 125 countries. So it should be really interesting. And then these additional, again, at Let It Ripple, there's a great, I don't know if any of you have seen this, Making of a Mensch. Yes. It's a great video. It's done with just the right amount of, it's like, it's nice. It's interesting. Your students won't think it's corny. It's really, really good. And it talks about what it is to be a mensch, which is the underlying study of Mussar, and I think we could all use it. Then there are a few websites, that you can learn more about Mussar. Then there are the 10 sfirot. So wisdom is one of the 10 emanations of God and the Jewish mystical tradition and Kabbalah. And you can get an image of the tree of life if you go to this site. And so this is where it's tied to Habad. Both Chokhmah and Bina appear as sfirot on the representation of this mystical tree. And these are characters that describe Bezalel, the craftsman of the tabernacle. The art school is named after him. So it says, I have filled Bezalel with the Spirit of God, with wisdom, Chokhmah, with understanding, Tvuna, which means the same as Bina, with knowledge, Da'at, and all kinds of skills. And it might be interesting to discuss the perceived similarities and differences between these terms. So that can be a nice additional thing to do. And then you can get these great laminated midot cards that have the Hebrew for each of the midah, and they're also at letitripple.org. There's a lot of good stuff that you can do from these links. So you've been great that you've been, in all along. But does anybody have a question or a comment that they want to share? Okay. Well, I really, really hope that you found this interesting and that it looks like something you'd love to do with your students. And I would love it if you could just go and register. Again, it doesn't cost anything, but that way I can make sure that I send everything out to you and that you're in our system. And there is a stipend of $250 for piloting. And it's the same thing that you did this year, to join webinars and to post on Facebook and to email me and to, at the end of the year, fill out a SurveyMonkey so that we know and we can tell. Our donors are really, they really think it's important for teens to connect in this way, and I'm really glad they do because I think it's important too. And I hope that you do too and that you'd like to sign in. Okay, great. Well, so go to chaymitzvah.org and please sign up. And if you have any questions, I'll also send out a follow-up with a couple of links in it. And thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nina.
Thanks, Nina. It's been
Thanks,
a great
everybody.
year.
Yes, it has been.
Yes. This is our last one. So thank you so much. Have a great summer. But I
You
hope
too.
You too.
Yes, it feels like summer here. So enjoy.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a quick question right now?
Yes, please.
I just wondering, have you worked with students as you developed this curriculum, with the actual teens? Have you gotten teen feedback on these ideas?
Yes, I have. I actually went back and taught in a Hebrew school. My cousin's the education director. I wanted to make sure that everything was registering completely.
Great.
I also there are different kinds of teens, and there's different, her synagogue happens to be really nice. The kids are very down to earth and nice. That's not true of every place. I go to a lot of synagogues. I do a lot of programs. So I always feel like you have to kind of know your students, know what's going to work and what's not going to work. Some stuff I know is too corny for anybody. Some stuff I'm surprised is too edgy sometimes. I'm in the New York area, and I think we have a certain level here of what teens are accustomed to. And I think that different places and different communities have, different attitudes. That's why I always feel like that's why we want you to test, obviously, and also why we tell you to do what works for you. There's also been a few community schools that have a different schedule, and because of that, they do this a little bit differently as well. So hopefully it's flexible, and you're enjoying it.
Great. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Okay. Goodbye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.